Welcome to this week's Policy Talk. My name is Jimmy Sellers. I'm with the Partnership for Community Action, and I'm here this week with Angelique, the Director of Policy for Good Business Colorado.
I'm Angelique Espinoza. I'm the Policy Director for Good Business Colorado. I'm pleased to be with you here this morning.
I wanted to throw out a few numbers that I thought were just incredible. That 1 in 9 US workers are being paid wages, working full time, year round, and still are living in poverty. That's pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm. It is, and it's a real opportunity cost for our overall economy because those folks who are living in poverty are obviously not able to patronize the small businesses that provide services and products for consumers.
Angelique, would you mind telling us more about this Wage Act and sharing what it may do for our businesses as well as our community?
Sure. Let's start with the sort of most contemporary and interesting part of this, which is that it was, as you may have heard on the news, originally, well, it is in the House version of the bill of the American Recovery Act. So President Biden, in his American Rescue Plan, was looking to incorporate this increase in minimum wage, but the Senate parliamentarian ruled that it was not sufficiently related to the federal budget, and therefore it could not move forward as part of the rescue plan. So it was stripped out. And there was some discussion of looking at a way to bring it forward as a carrot and stick tax break or increase. But really, the essential principle of the original idea on this Raise the Wage Act would be that the federal minimum wage, which hasn't been increased in, I don't even recall how many years, but it's quite some time, would go from 725, which is what it is now. Of course, there are states that have a higher and minimum wage than that, but 725 is the federal. It would raise that to $15 an hour by 2025. So it would phase in over a significant amount of time. It wouldn't just go all of a sudden tomorrow. And then what it would do, it would index it to median wage growth so that we don't get so out of whack again, where the idea of the minimum wage gets out of step with the actual inflation and buying power of those dollars. The other piece is that it guarantees that tipped workers are paid at least the full minimum wage. And that is a really interesting and complicated, in a way, proposal, because it really would revamp the way the restaurant industry would work altogether.
I know that in our region here in Chaffee County, that many of our restaurants specifically um, have spoken to this, obviously, and have had questions on this. How are they going to figure this out? How will this set a wage and still allow for tips? And I noticed that it also brings in two other different, I don't know if you would say classes, that sounds terrible, but um, youth workers, like teen workers, and then also those who are disabled, because I know that there are some tax credits for hiring people in certain programs. This would do away with that and set a base level. Can you speak to that at all?
Sure. So let's just talk a little bit about your first question, which is how's this going to work for restaurants, which is really well, it's That's a big piece of the tipped worker question. So right now, as you said, there are three categories of folks who are who employers are allowed to pay them less than the federal minimum wage today. So even less than that 725 number. And those are tipped workers. So your wait staff and host staff make usually $2, $3, $4 an hour. And most of what they're earning in tips, which is problematic in a number of ways. One is that it creates a great deal of inequity between what they call the back of house, which are the folks who are preparing the food. Very often those are people of color, Latinx folks, and those folks are, often getting paid minimum wage, sometimes more, but often minimum wage, and they're not getting tips. So, and where there's the front of house, depending on the restaurant, they might be making quite a bit on those tips. So equalizing the front and back of house and the equity concerns around that is one of the reasons to eliminate paying sub minimum wage to tipped workers. Another one is that there is quite a lot of sexual harassment that happens in that environment where wait staff, often female wait staff, don't feel like they can be standing up for themselves when there's a customer who might be harassing them, but they're depending on that customer's tip. So it really creates that equity issue in the restaurant industry as well. So these are a couple of things. And that's why I said it would really revolutionize the whole restaurant industry model in terms of addressing those issues. There's a couple of ways that restaurants can go about dealing with that, with the sharing of tips, or other ways of dealing with that. So one way is they can just do away with tips altogether and have a service fee that's just automatically put on the bill. So sometimes that the customer can just decline if they wish. Or there's something called tip pooling, where the tips are distributed amongst the restaurant workers in some kind of formula. And I think there's some other ways to handle it, but those are some of the primary ways. And it is a big adjustment, but in the end, it takes an industry that right now is really, honestly, it's based on a model that comes out of slavery, and it brings it into our modern day, where we believe that people should be respected for the work they do as whole people, and that people, and when they work hard, they should be able to make a living without fear of sexual harassment, without suffering the inequities and indignities that are unnecessary to have in the workplace.
I know this is one piece of the much larger rescue plan. Is there anything else you'd like to add specifically around the Wage Act, or do you want to talk a little bit about the small business pandemic relief?
Well, I'll just wrap that piece about the minimum wage by saying that indeed the other two categories of workers that are included in the Raise the Wage Act would be folks who, youth workers, who can be paid less than minimum wage, and the disabled workers who employers can get a special certificate to pay them less. So they would also be included in the Raise the Wage Act sort of wage reform. So, but let's talk a little bit more about what is included in the American Rescue Plan for small businesses. As I said, the Raise the Wage Act was stripped out, and so we will probably see it come back as a standalone piece of legislation, and it may follow the model that we've been talking about, or it might come forth as some kind of a tax penalty for organizations that don't pay that at least that $15 an hour, and then incentives for other businesses to do so, particularly small businesses. But that's not actually happening right this moment. What's actually moving through is the rescue plan, and the rescue plan has some things in it that are pretty great for small business. So one thing it's got is $15 billion in grants for targeted small businesses. So these funds are targeted to socially and economically disadvantaged businesses, and they are grants. They're called EIDL Advanced Grants, and EIDL stands for Economic Injury Disaster Loan, but they're not actually loans, they're grants. So there are loans, but these are the advanced grants. So 15 billion in the advanced grants targeted to those who have sort of been left out and already socially and economically disadvantaged. Then there is $25 billion in grants specifically for restaurants and bars and other similar type of businesses that have been particularly hard hit through this pandemic, as folks have not been able to go out as the way that they used to. So those are a couple of things that I think small businesses are really going to be able to benefit from with these funds. And additionally, there's a fair amount of flexibility with those grants in terms of how they can be used. You do have to prove that you've suffered economic injuries because of the pandemic. But the idea is that we really want to be able to help our small businesses weather this incredible storm and get to the other side.
I see here also we have an emergency paid leave. What is this about?
Sure. So, of course, a lot of folks have either had to quarantine or had to care for family members. In addition to the ordinary circumstances when we're not suffering a pandemic, when we find ourselves in need of paid family leave and medical leave. So the provision here would require businesses to offer a certain amount of paid family leave to their workers, but it would then also provide tax credits to those businesses to fully recover the cost of that paid leave.
What is the ETA on all of this? What are we thinking?
Well, it's through the House and it's going to the Senate. I think we're likely to see a very narrow passage, but certainly chances look good. That particularly, honestly, since the Raise the Wage Act has been stripped out, even the shy Democrats will probably support this. So I think we'll see it go through the Senate. We could see a filibuster. No, we won't see a filibuster on this because it's part of that special procedure. So I think we're going to see this move through, and I think they're going to want to get it on the president's desk sometime by the middle of the month.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I would just like to add that as a small business organization of about 350 some members of values-driven small businesses, we always appreciate folks' input. You know, we are here to represent our members, to take their voices to the state legislature and even to our state senators and congressmen. So if people have stories to share on either of these issues or on other issues that are of concern to them in terms of policy that's going on right now, we always appreciate hearing those. And sometimes, frequently, we can actually get that story in front of someone who makes decisions. So don't be shy. Email us, call us, tweet at us, let us know your concerns and the things that you care about as small businesses, and we'll lift up your voices.
Well, thank you, Angelique. And again, I'd like to thank Angelique Espinoza, the Director of Policy from Good Business Colorado. If you have any questions, please be sure to reach out, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.